All right, so thank you very much. Just a quick sidebar, you'll notice that we're in the middle of a rebranding effort, which we're officially kind of announcing here in a few weeks, but we are going to become the IT Transformation Institute. I just didn't want to confuse people if you see that down the road, so that's out there. But appreciate you guys for coming here. Let me start with the question. Who here considers themselves an IT professional in some way? All right. Most of the guys without ties, all right? And who here is then a business professional? Who here considers themselves both? Handful? All right, good. So so Ashwin, Joel, and I are all known to talk, so we've been given 10 minutes, and that's going to be a challenge. So we're going to do the best we can to get through this. And I'm going to start with a little bit of a story. So imagine that you get up on a Saturday morning, maybe this Saturday morning, and you head down to your local Wallstrom store. You guys have those, right? You know that place where the low-cost leader, they'll beat anybody's price, but it's the highest quality of everything, the absolute best in customer service, right? That's a perfect place. I want to go to Wallstrom's. We all want that. So you show up and you think, hey, this is great, I've never been there, so I'm gonna walk in. And I walk in and who would I meet? I meet this guy, Frank. Hey, Frank. And you kind of look around and you say, well, it's a little bit of a warehousey kind of feel, but he's really friendly. And he says, you know what, I'm so glad you are here. Welcome to our store. And by the way, have you heard about our no-hassle return policy? I don't care what, if you have anything wrong, we'll take care of it. Even if you didn't buy it here, we'll take it back. It's like, we are there for you. And you think, hey, this is great because my Aunt Edna, she bought me these cashmere shorts, not my thing. So I figure I'm going to return them. So he goes, no problem. You can go back to our Customer Excellence Experience Center, and they'll take perfect care of you. You walk back, not so excellent. And they're kind of struggling, and you say, maybe it's just a bad day. Maybe it's just, things haven't gone so well. So you figure, I've been looking for those new designer jeans. This is probably the best place to buy them. So you walk back to the whatever the designer jeans section looks like, and you start talking to them and they go, well, we don't actually carry that brand you were looking for because in order to be the low-cost leader, we really can only carry 3 brands because we have very stringent supply chain requirements and most people can't meet them, and so we have great service as long as you pick one of these 3. And so you walk out and you look a little like this. You're just not real happy because you walked in with this great promise, this great idea, and they just really failed to live up to either. And my basic premise is that we in IT organizations largely have kind of come to this point, that we have historically tried to be both the strategic innovator and this low-cost leader, and it's really, really difficult to do both at the exact same time. And just like Walmart and Nordstrom's have different models based on the fundamental approach they're taking to the market, IT organizations and really entire organizations have to be doing the same thing. And that's what we're going to be talking a little bit about today. And I think that part of the challenge is that we have to realize that a lot of folks in this room, frankly, haven't been real happy with the way this is working up to this point, or at least as it's evolved. Here's some stats from a very recent Gartner study. And this is actually, they did a study of, I think it was 350 Fortune 500 CFO types. And these are pretty staggering numbers. 30%, only 30%, thought that IT was providing a clear business benefit. And to me, the more challenging one, and I'm glad to say I think that this doesn't apply to the esteemed executives we have in the room today, but only 32% saw their CIO as a strategic business partner. And this is probably most troubling in that I forgot the exact number, I should have written it up here, but it's something like 55 or 60% of the CIOs reported to the CFO. So we clearly are having this kind of challenge going on with the business model that IT has been operating under. And I think there's a few reasons for that. One of the first, though, is that this has been going on for a while, but there's been this change over the last 5-6 years that is really starting to shift things up. And that is really these new technologies that have really changed the perspective of a lot of you in this room. Because up until a few years ago, most of these corporate IT services, the only place you could actually get them was from your corporate IT organization. And so it was kind of this captive audience. Well, things like Gmail have started to really change that perspective. Because you guys can all go home today, and while corporate IT may have this long provisioning process and all these limitations, you can go and provision yourself an email account on Gmail in about 15 seconds. It's going to come with all these amazing search technologies and capabilities. You're going to have 7 gigs of space, and by the way, it's free. And if you look at then something like Facebook, this is my page, don't look at it, but we've got also, my next high school reunion is being planned on Facebook. It's this amazing collaboration tool, and yet it's technology that in most of our corporate enterprises, we certainly don't have that same level. It's certainly not that level of ease. A little sidebar, to talk about the generational stuff, it took me 2 years to get my daughter to friend me on Facebook. She just basically said, Dad, How
long to defriend?
I won't let her do that. But, well, I guess I probably can't control it, can I? I kept asking her, she goes, Dad, I don't want you to know what I'm doing. I go, then you really have to friend me because I need to keep track, right? But it's just changed the paradigm. We all start looking at technology different. This consumerization of IT is really changing that perspective. And the iPad, good old Apple computer is my favorite. And I kid you not, I was in a room full of CIOs about 1.5 years ago, and there's a whole bunch of them basically just saying the iPad is never going to get traction in corporate space. It's a game, it's a tool. You weren't there, I know. And it is fascinating because what we've seen is while IT organizations maybe weren't ready for this, business was. And so this technology has entered and has come in, and it's really fundamentally changing the shift. And so it's bringing us to the point, in combination with something I'm going to talk about here in a little second with this idea of competition, but bringing it to this point that, at least in my opinion, IT as we know it has run its course in this particular model. And since the dawn of the mainframe era, really about 45 years ago, we've had this kind of monolithic approach that IT organizations were the purveyor of technology within an enterprise. And I think that is fundamentally shifting here. And it is representing this change in the fundamental value equation that exists within IT organizations and really in the relationship between IT and IT's customers. And what's really fascinating about this is I don't actually see this as a bad thing or really as anything more than the writing of the relationship that should have been there all along. And so I think that's where this is going. And part of that whole process is that technology has become so critical that there's been this fundamental shift. I'm going to talk about it in a second. I've been reading Ashwin's book. And he talks about in it the fact that when technology really started in the back office, right? But does anyone know what this is? I mean, it's a little hard to tell. If you're in healthcare, you might recognize this. When I started in healthcare, these were all over the place. It's called a downtime form. Most people don't even have these anymore. Because if the technology fails to that point, you just go home. It is so critical to everything that's going on that the organization, the enterprise, can't look at it as this thing off to the side anymore, right? And so it is, again, another factor that has changed that perspective. And then there's one other piece of this, and that is that up until a few years ago, everything was pretty captive. These are all companies that are now providing services that up until a few years ago could only be provided really by internal IT organizations. And these guys are all now selling these services directly into organizations. And again, this is actually a good thing in many cases, right? But it has fundamentally shifted the business model that IT operates under and the way that both IT and IT's customers, all of us, have to look at how we put all this together. And so I think what we've done is we're coming to the point, what I'm calling an end point. Now, this isn't a dead end, but I think that the IT organizations, as they've come up to this point, we're reaching this junction where decisions have to get made. And I call this either being a strategic sourcer or a strategic innovator. And the sourcer is kind of what it sounds like. It is this highly developed supply chain approach, low-profile kind of IT organization that is fundamentally focused on identifying the most strategic suppliers that meet those needs and being excellent at managing that supply chain. And the strategic innovator is kind of the other side of that coin, is an organization that costs still count, right? I think that part is done. We always are going to have to be worried about cost, but it's really focusing on how do you leverage that technology to drive innovation and strategic advantage. It is fundamentally this choice that IT organizations have to choose between being Walmart or Nordstrom's. But more to the point, it isn't really a choice. It's about coming together and understanding what is actually needed. Which model supports the business? Which model is really the direction that is going to drive value? And it is what we really call, or what I've been calling, this era of the quantum age of IT. And that really means two things, and I'm not going to go into a whole lot of this right now, but it means two fundamental things. One, I believe, as this transition occurs, I think we're going to see the explosive application of technologies, right? Because as we get more focused, as IT organizations stop trying to be everything to everybody and focus on those things that add true explosive value, that it becomes this explosive application of technology. But the other thing that happens is, from a physics standpoint, quantum means really optimal. It's the smallest component of an element that can maintain its integrity, maintain its properties. And I think that's what happens. I think IT organizations in this state start becoming the most optimized form of themselves. And none of this is going to happen in isolation, right? And so I think there's two things that really have to occur here. The first is that IT organizations have to envelop these traits, what I call the 5 traits of the quantum IT organization. And we're going to talk a little bit about what these are today. The first is a learning organization. The second is a highly disciplined organization. The third is a transparent organization, one that unabashedly exposes its financial and operational performance. That leads to a true intimate organization where we start transcending this. And then finally, a dynamic organization, which is one that is able to move not so much in alignment, in my opinion, but it's really about we're moving together. And two last real points about this is not about technology. Fundamentally, what we're talking about here is about interactions and relationships. That is, in my opinion, what the quantum age is really all about. It's about transcending. Technology is obviously still going to be there. But it's about how to be effective by focusing on interactions and relationships. I was interviewing the CIO of Blue Cross Blue Shield of Rhode Island, Bill Ray, very smart guy. And he says, you know, IT is not even 90% about people anymore. It's 98% about people. It is about building those relationships, about defining those interactions. And so as we talk about these 5 traits, and Ashwin and Joel are each going to talk a little bit about a couple components of these. And I'm the theory guy. These guys are the ones that actually do it. And none of this is new, really. I mean, we've been talking about a lot of this stuff from an IT perspective. Business organizations have been talking about the need for this for a long time. What I think is it's all finally coming together. So Ashwin, sorry, I'm probably going to embarrass you a little bit. But I'm going to read specific because it actually speaks to the heart of this. So this is, if you guys haven't read this, you can buy this on Amazon. Ashwin wrote a book a couple of years ago, Tomorrow's CIO. I think a lot of the proceeds go to some good cause, which you can talk about. But here's what he said in one of the chapters here. The worldview of business professionals is considerably different from the worldview of IT professionals. Business people deal with the day-to-day reality of defining, developing, and delivering customer value. IT professionals deal with abstracting those into symbolic forms and re-representing them in machine language for the benefit of the business. Good CIOs understand that there are 2 different worlds, and I wholeheartedly believe this. But insightful CIOs create a bridge between those different worlds. That's really what we're here to talk about today. We're talking about how together, IT professionals, business professionals, we build that bridge and we walk across it every day. That's what I believe this represents, and that's why I believe this is what, not only what IT organizations have in front of them, but what business professionals have to recognize, that this is not going to happen in a vacuum by itself, because this requires a level of engagement and interaction that transcends. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ashwin, and we'll go from there. Thanks.